Vasudevendra yogin
Gabriel.
natva dhyana pradam gurum mumukshunam hitarthaya Tattvabodho bhidiyate. How to think about endurance, how to think about this tolerance. What does it mean to be tolerant? What does it mean to be tolerant towards the oncoming winds that life brings us? He said, I think about the big picture. In that moment, I just take a moment to bring in the big picture for a moment, that all is well. And just that short statement there, I bring in the statement that all is well, and I look at the big picture. That is very beautiful. Just to that little reminder, just to let us know that ultimately, everything is fine. Everything is fine. It always will be fine. It never will not be fine. It's only that our minds tend to sort of make things not fine. They tend to maybe paint an image of some future that is not kind of light. So ultimately, we're bringing some rationale that everything is fine. That is fact. Everything will always be fine. So this is all part of, what's called mind management, really, because all we really have is our minds. That's all we have. It's our best friend, your mind. Your mind is really what you have, nothing else. So there's no question of kind of silencing the mind or, eliminating the mind. The mind is all you have. Even the one who wants to eliminate that mind, you need a mind for that. So the mind is for to be used as a friend, treated as a friend, someone that's there to help you. So for the friend to help you, you need to help your friend. Right. So we need to feed our friend with some positive thoughts. We need to encourage our friend. And, there was this book that kind of expands upon this mind of ours. And I was just reading this book called Thinking Fast and Slow. Thinking Fast and Slow. So basically it is, what they use is a model. And it's a model similar to, it's basically all models are the same. They're just worded differently. Now, Thinking Fast and Slow, it's by an economist. He's a behavioral psychologist, a cognitive neuroscientist, and an economist. So he combined all these three fields: economy, how we act and why we choose certain stocks and why not other stocks. He studied certain behaviors and in psychology. So he put it all together to help us to get to know this mind a little bit better. And I thought this is a brilliant model to show us. Actually, I would like to give us some examples. So what he does is he divides the human mind into two systems. He calls it System 1 and System 2. Now, System 1 is what we all most of the time live in. But before I get to System 1, System 2 is what this mind, this Shraddha, this Shama and Dhamma is about. A conscious, slow thinker. This is why the book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. So the System 2 is this slow, calculating, informative. It solves complex tasks. So, for example, if I ask you, what is 17 times 32? What's 17 times 32? Immediately, notice your experience right now. What's 17 times 32? Immediately, notice how there's some effort involved, right? Slow. Notice how everything has just slowed down, right? Everything's slowed down. And there's no question of impulsivity. You need to bring in what? Effort to consciously think it through step by step to work out this simple equation. So this is the thinking slow part, which incidentally is required for self-inquiry. In fact, this whole book is required. You need System 2. You need System 2 that is slow, careful, and it does require efforts, right? However, he makes a very interesting argument. In fact, it's not an argument, it's just an observation. He says, unfortunately, due to our evolutionary progression, we all fall back to System 1. This is where the mind thinks fast. This is the automated system, the impulsive mind, the mind that thinks from associative memory. So it looks at something and it judges the present based on the past impressions.
And this system one is mostly used because it helps us to navigate the world and survive quickly, right? It helps us to take care of the problem and move on. When system one cannot figure it out, then it offloads it to system two. However, because system one is used so often, this sense of what I've done in the past, I'll just do that again. Solve the problem, move on. For example, just some examples of system one. GPS, right? So before GPS came, what do we have to use? We had to use system two. The moment GPS came along, system two was eliminated. We don't even have basic north, south, east, west directions, right? More or less. So what? It got replaced by system one. Easy, just put a screen in front and follow directions. So it seems on the surface like it's easier, but what it's actually doing is it's taking away system two, the slow, calculating, inquiring mind. And he gave some examples how system one likes to fill in the gaps without thinking further. So it just fills it in and it just moves on. Suppose you see someone at the subway on a train station or in the train, and you're in the train and someone's pulls a book out. They pull a book out and they start to read the book. What's the first thing that we assume the moment we see this? Someone pulled the book out, and they're like into their book, right? Instantly we assume this is a intelligent person. This is an avid reader. They're highly educated, full stop. And then we just leave it at that. And then we don't even think about it. The fact is we don't even have any proof, right? He has no proof that this person is intelligent, that they're an avid reader or any of that. But system one just puts something that through associative memory, and then it just takes that from the past through impressions, puts it onto as a wallpaper over this fella, and then moves on, just to take care of it, because it's easy like that. And this is mostly what's called intuition. We have this fascination with just having intuition, just think intuitively. But this intuition is actually, for most of the time, what? System one. Right? I have an intuition about this person. It feels off. Something feels fishy. Now it could be true, right? It could be true. But what if, as a youngster, you saw someone that looks similar to this fella, and now we don't remember who we saw 10 years ago, but we saw someone that looks 10 years ago, and we were sort of scared. We were irrationally scared. And now we find this from the unconscious, system one, from the unconscious, and then we wallpaper this fella and we say something feels fishy. I have an intuition about this person. They're a fishy person, right? And then we just full stop, just like the subway person. So this is thinking system one, how it just kind of fills in the blanks and then it just wants to move on to the next part. Now, in some cases, this intuition happens to be highly developed. In the very rare cases, depends on the years of experience, of course. The book mentions a very nice example. The firefighter, the chief of the firefighter, right? He had his 5 men brought into a kitchen in a restaurant that was undergoing a serious fire. And suddenly this chief just suddenly cried out, "Let's all get out of here. Let's all get out of here of the kitchen." So they were putting out the fire in the kitchen. And suddenly this chief had just intuitively said, "Everyone just get out of the kitchen." The moment they got out of the kitchen, the floor of the kitchen just collapsed. And then they discovered that the actual fire was in the basement. Now, the chief later on couldn't explain. Why did I call this out? I don't know. I just had what? An intuitive calling to make this call. I just made this call unknowingly. So he cannot explain it, but the fact is his mind, his perception still captured that something was not right. Something was not consistent. They put out the fire in the kitchen and the kitchen was extremely hot for no particular reason. So his mind in the background concluded this must mean that something's wrong. And on that, he called out, "Let's get out of here." So this is an example where years of experience can actually hone in our intuition and make it relatively right. The only thing is we never know whether our intuition is completely right and how much of it is influenced from the past and how much of that are we just kind of wallpapering over the present. However, what we do know is that the more years of experience that one has in a particular field, the more this intuition gets to be fine-tuned. But the point is this intuition, right? I have an intuition about this person. The real takeaway is, instead of just leaving it at system one, right? Just to sort of call out the memory and then put it into the present, then why not bring in system two, the slow mind, and at least look into it and ask, could this really be true about this person on the subway? Or some question that will kind of engage your intellect just a little bit more. It also gives some nice examples just to show us what it means to, how this system, this quick mind, this quick assumer that just assumes and moves on, how it works. And he uses some examples like Lucy will be a good leader. She is an intelligent woman, right? And they just leave it at that. So what happens? We heard just one adjective, intelligent. We just heard two pieces of facts, Lucy and intelligent. What does the mind now do? Oh, okay, she's intelligent. This is good to know. It's good that she's intelligent. That's it. This is system one. But do you ask intelligent relative to what? How many years does this account for, intelligent? What else does system one do? It creates an image. Okay, so Lucy's intelligent, so this means she must be old. She must be wearing a certain suit. She has to be, she's probably got children. She has this years of experience and so on. So it creates a list. One adjective, intelligent. What does system one do? It goes old, probably a mother. She's probably a white collar worker. She is, she's like this. So look at this, how system one works. You give it one word, and through associative memory, what does it do? It calls associated words based on what we have associated to this one word of intelligence. And system one just leaves it at that. Another example that the book mentions is there was a study done where they said that smaller towns or rural areas, which are sparsely populated, their rate of kidney cancer is smaller than the rate of kidney cancer in bigger cities. Okay. Now you say, why is that? Right? Why do you think that is? Right? The smaller rural areas, their rate of kidney cancer is a lot less than those of bigger cities. And then the mind thinks, well, that's because of what? Lifestyle, right? Less stress, cleaner air, cleaner food, no stress. Makes sense. Absolutely not. Zero. It's got nothing to do with that. The real answer is because when you have a small sample size, that sample size tends to be either random or highly inaccurate, versus a bigger city. When you have a sample size of 3 million, then that sample size tends to be a lot more accurate to the true number. So what system one initially thought, it didn't think further than that. It just stopped right there. In fact, we can take this one step further. Suppose the stats said, and they said this, the rate of kidney cancer in rural areas is a lot higher than in the city. What are you going to think now? The kidney cancer, right, is a lot higher in those very remote places in rural areas, is a lot higher than in populated cities. That is because of what? Alcohol, poverty, abuse. Absolutely not. Same, because that's also true in cities. That's not any different in the cities. Same thing. Small sample size equals inaccurate results. So this is system one, assuming and not thinking about it any further. Another lovely example they say is there was a study of 300 elders, 300 older people, and 300 elder people, and out of those 300 people, 60% approved the president. So now what does system one do? So this means 60% of the entire nation of elderly people approve the president, right? System one, 100% incorrect. Same thing. 300 people is highly, highly inaccurate to judge any kind of results.
So this is why, when they say, when you look at the polls, right, in the politics, when they say, the former president, their polls are always up. Now, why are they up? Because the sample size is very, very small. Why are we saying all of this? Because it's just to show you how, whatever is easy, whatever is effortless, is what the mind likes to, what it likes to fall back to. But that does not help us when we are studying knowledge of reality. It does not help us at all, because we need to look at the nuances of what we are talking about. So this means that we need to now bring in what Shama and Dhamma, this conscious thinker, this effortful thinker that does stop and think about it. Just like when I said, what is 17 times 32? Right? What is 17 times 32? Now let's go and think about it. This is what we're talking about. This is the inquirer's mind. So I like to show you, what it means to think about this. It's not just listening, but looking behind the words. What is the implied meaning behind the words? One last one. So suppose that Subramanu is walking in the bustling street of New York. And end of the day, they're tired. And so they want to sit down at a restaurant, and they find out their wallet is gone. What happened to the wallet? Yeah. Now look at how the mind thinks, New York, bustling street equals what? Stolen. Did we even say the word stolen? No, 100 things could have happened. It could have fallen out. Their wife could have taken it and played a prank on them. We don't know. Anything could have happened. They could have left it at a shop accidentally. So this is what it means. System 1 likes to fill in causality. It is fascinated with causality. It looks at the cause for every effect. So everything that happens in life, it always wants to fill in the cause despite having no evidence. And so it creates this narrative inside the mind, which then the person will go through and try to solve something despite having no evidence at all. Point is, Shama and Dhamma is this system 2. Taking away, system 2, taking away this conscious, slow mind, what's the likely consequence of that is that we lose our patience. We think, so I've been doing this, it's not working. Come on, I want results. I want something to happen. I want something to happen. I want something to happen. But this is how system 1 thinks. It's been thinking like that before. So now we need to break that cycle consciously, deliberately, so that we can start looking at the upsides of life, some positivities, bring some optimism into our life. And this is all part of thinking system number 2. In fact, we could even say that the reason why the mind reverts back to looking at things pessimistically is because its system 1 is a lot easier. And it just looks at how it saw things before. It's easy. So we have to deliberately, consciously break this cycle by bringing in system 2, the thinker. And how do you know that you bring in system 2? Because it feels like effort. It feels like effort. And what does effort feel like? Well, everyone knows that. It's almost like, I don't want to do this. So if I don't want to do this, there is a call for what? Let's do this. It's a call for let's continue this. Because now, how long do you have to do this? Not for long, because we just train our mind, and automatically through some time, it starts to do this automatically. It starts to think, bringing system 2 automatically.
Is this similar to the mobile phone before it came into use? We used to remember all the numbers. I used to memorize all the numbers, including overseas numbers. But since the mobile phone came, I even forgot my own children's number. It's just click, 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 look at it, and that's it.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
So is that similar what you're talking about, the mind taking over?
Yeah, it's the same thing, Rani, even with this chat GPT now. It's even taking away the ability to write articles. I hear that people are just using this to write books to cheat their way into fame. I'm an author. I'm an author by asking this thing to write an article for me. And you just put 50 articles together. You got a book, slap your name onto it. But the point is, it's just stealing away the glory of being a human being. The glory of being a human being is this system too, the slow, conscious, deliberate thinker. Why give power to the world to steal this most precious gift that we have?
I just wanted to expand about what you just said about writing articles and stuff. So my sister's a professor at Macquarie University, and she's got law students who are, she's not even sure if they're writing their exams anymore. So that chat GDP that you're talking about, they're able to put in, they're able to enter into request it to write and give them the problem, give the system the problem, and then say, just don't make it sound too professional. And this system will just spit out a whole argument. And she's trying to correct all these exams and all these things. And she's always wondering how much input is actually from that. It's very hard to distinguish. And these people are going to be qualified in law, so they'll be able to work in the legal system. And what are they qualified in if they're not actually using their own mind to just discern right from wrong and make a judgment on something? So it's a really responsible role that they're taking on, but they're using these mechanisms that through technology to actually create these articles or whatever they're doing. So it's a bit scary in that way, because they're given responsibility afterwards to make a judgment on something, and how much of it is actually being retained and actually being thought about. And it makes you wonder, it's a bit too easy.
Yeah, it does make me wonder. We cannot really do much about this, but we can only ourselves. We can appreciate our system to glory. So we're not speaking for others now; we're speaking for ourselves. So the thing is, what can you and I do to appreciate and bring more of system two, this Shama and Dhamma, into our own experience? This is all we can do. So, all great things come, all inventions that we enjoy and all things that we get inspired by, all good speakers and people who have moved humanity to new heights, they were all speaking from this depth, from this system to depth. And so let's keep that up as much as we can. And in fact, there's no other option, because, liberation does require some thoughtfulness.
This is very much similar to saying, as you just said, system two is a conscious effort to bring in the mind. It's very much similar to the Sanskrit word mananam, because you need to reflect. Now, the whole issue is life's experiences will only teach you to do this system two effort. It's very much like in the London Underground, the old Victorian metros have space between the platform and the car. So people have mind the gap, and there will be an announcement, mind the gap before you alight and come off the train. So you need to train that mind to train not to be a quick responder in any life situation. Now, the only thing is, if you keep on doing that, obviously you are, with your experience and training, you will learn to do this faster and better. That is called wisdom. And Vedanta is teaching us to go on to this path, basically. I could carry on and on, but that is something very similar. If you look at it, if in any situation, put a wedge between those two thoughts quickly before you respond immediately, you will find there might be a different solution.
Now, very good, Nitin. So now I just want to add, there's not much to add because Nitin has got a good point. So suppose now in real life, right, then you don't have time to respond. And Gayatri brought this before. And now, on one hand,
there is value in this reflection, in this introspection, thinking just giving some space between my answer and what I heard, giving time for the mind to collect itself, to bringing the right references, and then to make the best possible conclusion, and then to verbalize it, right? But also in real life, right, then we are often pressured, and and so what we can do, if we do our best, right, and then you see some feedback, the feedback is not quite what you would have thought it would, or how it should be, then you can reflect on that. So every time you reflect on what responses you get, that too is training the mind, bringing in system 2 to next time to think in the background, just like that fireman, to think in the background and instantaneously bringing the best possible solution, or best possible way of dealing with something that does happen, does require our attention, right? So this fireman, right, he made mistakes for sure before. In fact, this is what the Navy does. They have this protocol. Every time a pilot comes back, lands on the runway, after their mission, they have a duty to ask the question: what did I do right? What went wrong? What went right? And how can I do better next time? So these three, literally, they are required to ask these three questions. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And what will I do better next time? So this allows them to reflect on their experience, and next time to incorporate that wisdom, that knowledge into their next mission. Now, Nitin mentioned the word wisdom. So now what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Knowledge is something that you acquire. Thinking about it, mananam, reflecting upon it, integrating it, it becomes wisdom. So when we say a wise person, what do we mean? We mean a person who is learning. This is called listening, right? To opening oneself up to this knowledge, shravanam. They're thinking about it, they're applying it in different situations, and they're getting feedback. And they're now thinking, how will I, and they're sculpting themselves. They are reshaping their character based on the feedback. And this person over time is what we call a wise person, So they're taking knowledge, they're working with it, and they are getting feedback and then incorporating it into their personality, into different situations. And this makes the person slowly wiser and wiser and wiser. Yeah. And this takes time. So there's no point trying to speed it up. It cannot be sped up. It can only be, you can only, take a natural course of time, just like seasons. Seasons do not speed things up. If they were to speed things up, the entire ecosystem would fall apart. In that same way, the human being is made up of seasons, and every person has their own individual seasons, and those seasons have to take their course. And while they're taking their course is what builds our wisdom and what builds our experience. And therefore, this is where titiksha, or endurance, is required, not to try to be, sort of speed things up. You cannot speed things up. You know why? Because this is not your creation. This is the creation of the order, of the intelligence. And this intelligence has its appropriate cycle. And this cycle needs to take time for every person to develop inner wisdom, to develop inner strength. Okay. And now, speaking of this order, is why we require Shraddha, trust. Okay, so this means this order that makes all seasons work, that not only for nature but every individual, is in which we put our Shraddha, in which we put our faith in. So let's see what it says. Shraddha kidrshi Guru Vedanta Vakyadishu Vishwasaha Shraddha. Okay, so Shraddha. So Shraddha, we say it's faith, but I just say it's trust. It's having trust. It says Guru Vedanta. So now what's this Guru? Guru is the teacher. It's the expounder of the knowledge. Any subject matter requires a specialist in that particular area. And what kind of guru is this? It is the one that teaches Vedanta. It is not the one that teaches Devanta. You know what is Devanta? The one that teaches all about different devas, all about gods, God in heaven, God this one, God that one, all different names for gods. So this one is not teaching duality. A guru is the one who reconciles differences. A guru is not the one who adds more differences in your life. He or she is the one who points out, yes, there are differences, but here's also the similarities in all of them. That is the guru. Otherwise, if the guru or just the teacher shows you how, you're a small being and everything else is big, then how are you going to feel? It's just going to add more pressure. It's going to kill one's self-esteem. It's going to create more contradictions. It's just going to cause behavior that is kind of dismissive of other people, because after all, there's nothing to do on earth. It is all in heaven. And so I just need to kind of worship, Krishna and worship some devas. And after that, I will go to Vaikuntha. I will go to, I will go to some special places. So meanwhile, just worship him, and you just dismiss everything else here. There's nothing to do on earth. And so what kind of a person is this now? It's a dismissive person. It is a person who's living in more separation, who's creating more division within themselves, within their family even. Anyone who doesn't stand for that guru that they believe in will now no longer be in their circle. So this is not a guru. A guru reconciles apparent differences. Yes, we say there are differences. There is a difference in everything. This whole world is just duality. But at the same time, we need to bring some resolution to all of this. And this is what a Vedanta guru is. And now this teacher, right? Every teacher, one second, does guru have to be external? Who is internal guru? Atman, balanced mind. In Vedanta tradition, good question. So in Vedanta tradition, the guru is someone that you have a personal relationship with. It is a real human being. It's not someone that's passed away. The reason why is because someone who's passed away, we project our stuff on. System one comes on and we say they were great, they were awesome. Of course they were great and awesome, because we don't see them in real life. You will notice that as soon as someone dies, what happens? We just instantly glorify them. There's something about human behavior that just does this automatically. While they were alive, we dismissed them, we had thoughts about them, we projected onto them. The moment they die, oh, they were the best person. There was no one like him. There will never be anyone like him. This is just human behavior. It's ridiculous, but it happens all the time. So now, if the guru is dead, and that one, and you call your guru dead, which is okay. It's an inspiration. We'll just say it's a good inspiration. I had also had Ramana Maharishi for a long time, but while I had Ramana Maharishi, what happened? I couldn't ask questions, right? So whatever he said, that was the final word. But because it did not apply to the present times, it did not apply to you right now as a conscious, living, breathing fella who's got blood flowing through their body, that fella needs to ask a question pertinent to their life. They need to communicate with another human being who can talk to them at their level, using their language, understand their emotions, accommodate them, and also not dismiss their question, because every question matters to the one who's asking the question. Now, if I don't have anyone to ask the question, what happens? Then the mind is so genius, it keeps on creating questions, but I've got no one to ask those questions. And so none of those questions get answered. And what happens? The fella ends up being in a state of doubt. One doubt after another doubt, unanswered. So they are walking in this world unanswered. And how does a fella who's got unanswered question walk through the world? They walk through the world with false, incorrect notions that are not compatible with the present times. And therefore, all of these funny behavioral issues come out, like dismissing others, not showing any sort of modesty or humility, but rather just being this very uneasy person with themselves. ourselves and with other people. And this is a product of not having someone to relate with and someone to sort of mention your important questions. So that's the boon. It is said that every human being has 3 boons. Only a human being has free will to think about their life. In fact, it's great being a human being because this experience isn't only about pleasantness, it also includes suffering. Now, if you're a deva, then you're only enjoying. Now, when you're happy, are you asking existential questions? What's the meaning of all this? No, you're just having a great time. So questions only come in the place of displeasure. When things are not completely going according to our expectations, then we start to ask questions. Okay, so first boon is to be born a physical human being and enjoy this body. Okay, ticked. But there's 2 more boons for all 3 to be complete. That's not enough because many human beings get born and their life gets wasted in just sense pleasure, satisfaction. That's not good enough. You need to have the second boon, to find the guru. To find the guru, not a dead guru, but one who is alive, the one who upholds and keeps the tradition alive. So if you found the guru, how do you know you found the guru? You just happen to relate with them. It's not a big deal. You just relate to them just like you relate with your friend. It's nothing mysterious. So you find the guru who is teaching Vedanta, but that's still not good enough because many do have guru and they're what? They're not their disciple. They are their devotee. The devotee is who makes it about the teacher, right? And disciple is about the teaching, right? Okay, so I'll go with that. So now, there's a human being and now there's a difference. You can either be a disciple or you can be a devotee. Who is a disciple? A disciple is who values the knowledge that the guru is sharing. A devotee is all about, we have a guru. We have a guru. Hey, we have our son, we have our daughter, we have our in-laws, we have a guru, we have a house. So the guru is just one more thing that one adds to their repertoire. So we don't want devotees, we want disciples. A disciple is the one who values the knowledge. The guru is just an instrument through which this knowledge can flow through. Number 1, human being. Number 2, one has the guru. And number 3, the knowledge being taught by the guru has to still take place for you. It has to actually fructify. It has to become real for you. And that is the most important, which is called moksha. So in other words, the third boon is to actually fructify what the guru is teaching. And this requires some effort on your part. No one can do this for you, but only your own commitment can fructify this third boon. Okay? So this is Shraddha. So Guru Vedanta. So Guru who teaches Vedanta, and now the Guru may say things that are not in the scriptures. Why so? Because we're not living 3,000 years ago. We are in 2020. So there will be some different parts. For example, System 1 and System 2, this is not part of the Vedas. This is part of a book that was written, I believe, in after 2015 somewhere. So now this teaching doesn't contradict the Vedas. So as long as the teaching, as long as the words don't contradict your experience, then that is still okay. Now, suppose your guru says, hey, I want you to look at this orange. You see this orange? Huh? This is an orange. Heads are shaking no. Good. So what does this mean? Even if the guru says something, your experience to what the guru says should not contradict to what the teacher is saying. So in other words, in this example, who are you trusting more? What are you trusting? You're trusting your eyes. Your eyes is therefore what's called a pramana. A pramana, a means of knowledge, an instrument by which knowledge takes place. So your eyes say there's nothing that looks like an orange. The color is not even orange. That is not an orange. So in other words, by having faith in your pramana, right now you have trust in what? You have trust in your pramana, means of knowledge. By having trust in your means of knowledge, what happens? Knowledge of an object takes place. We said already before, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. The one who has, the possessor of faith, is the one who gains knowledge. In this case, you have faith in what? You have faith in your eyes. Because you have faith in your eyes, which are pramana, what happens? Knowledge of cup takes place. In that same way, if we look at the word what is this word? Vishwasaha. Vishwasaha. It means belief in the words. In other words, belief in the words, trust in the words of the Vedas long enough until you discover that these words are true for you. You discover that these teachings are true for you. So in other words, one is using their viveka, their discriminative inquiry, to point out flaws that are mentioned by the world or different notions. You are using your viveka to pick out things that contradict your experience. If I say this is an orange, that immediately contradicts your experience because you have more faith in your eyes, and therefore what? You raise the objection. And that's called mananam, as we said. That's called mananam, raising an objection to clarify something that doesn't fit your experience. So in other words, as long as there is faith, knowledge can take place. The moment you take faith out, no matter what we say, knowledge will not take place. Because the Vedas, right, Tattva Bodha, is a pramana. It is a book, or it's a means through which knowledge takes place. Through which knowledge of what? Of tattva, of you. In other words, one has enough faith long enough to be patient, which is why we need what? Titiksha, endurance, until we go through the entire text, through all the way to the end of the book, and then decide whether this makes sense or not. Until then, one is to have enough faith to go through the text so that we can arrive to what? Tattva, to the reality. Okay, so this is Shraddha. Question was asked, what's the difference between bhakti and Shraddha? Bhakti is, in English, devotion, and Shraddha is trust. So see, when you're devoting why? Because you have a level of trust in what you're devoting. See, you can only devote to something if you believe it holds some power, it holds some value or some merit for you. So devotion in overall, what is devotion? Devotion can be expressed in any way. There's no particular image of what devotion looks like. You know, devotion is not just meditating. It's not just praying. It's not just going to the temple. It's not just knowledge. Devotion is just love for truth. Love for truth can be expressed in a million different ways, as your lifestyle, as practicing these values, treating others properly, right? Being accommodative. That means contributing your love to the environment. This is also devotion. So devotion is just having enough wisdom to focus on what matters for you. In fact, we are never not devoted. See, even a businessman is devoted towards what? Money. They're devoted towards stock prices. A kid is devoted towards what? Computer games. A doctor is devoted towards their patients. They're devoted towards getting some positive results from their patients. So in other words, your devotion changes according to where you put your focus. So devotion is not even a matter of, do I have devotion or not? Just to be interested in something requires to have devotion. Just to stay somewhere long enough and not go away implies there is devotion. So devotion is something that we just simply find very important for us personally, and trust is whereby you put aside this insistent need to be right and open yourself up to the possibility that perhaps my notions have some space for improvement. This is also called modesty or humility. In fact, there's a question, what is the difference between confidence and humility? And how do you bring these two together? Because often they're not, they seem like they're incompatible. Absolutely not. Confidence is believing in yourself, believing that you have enough experience, you have something to give, you have contribution to give, believing, hey, I am getting far, I am sitting, I am listening, I am trying, you have skills, you have strengths. So confidence is acknowledging your strengths and just giving them some attention, because sometimes we just are so hard on ourselves. We have such high standards that we totally forget about that we're actually being a sincere human being, trying the hardest that we can. We're doing everything we can to assimilate the facts, to assimilate the truth. So confidence is about knowing your strengths and believing in yourself that you absolutely play some part, some important part in the grand picture. You play some part in this world. There is no question about that. But at the same time, one needs to bring in what? Humility. So this means despite having enough confidence and having enough experience, there is always a chance that my confidence, that my experience and my knowledge may have what? Blind spots. Therefore, humility amidst confidence means remaining open, remaining a student, remaining a learner, despite believing and while believing in yourself, believing in your abilities, that you do have light to shine in this world, that you are itself a light. You are a light for many people, believe it or not. There are people without which, if you were not here, their life would be a lot more, they will not be so of a quality. It will not be of a qualitative life as much as it is now. So you are a candle for some people in this world. And so having confidence is just about knowing, hey, I am a candle, I am a light for some people, I do play a part, and I do have skills, and I do have some knowledge to share, and I absolutely am trying my hardest, and there's nothing more that I can do than that. So this is confidence, while remaining what? A sincere learner, always being open to refining one's notions or polishing one's notions a little bit. So this is confidence and humility put together. So confidence has got nothing to do with identifying with anything or any kind of role. It's just that knowing what you are about in this world.
I was wondering what role respect has in trust and bhakti and also in Shraddha and dealing with the guru.
Yeah.
And other, I guess with dealing with the guru and having Shraddha.
See, you can only have this trust in someone if you respect them. Respect and trust, they go hand in hand. We trust people because we respect them. We respect them because we see that they carry something that we value. They carry something that is important for us. In fact, suppose there's a chef sitting at an airport and he's a world-renowned chef, and you sit next to him and he starts to passionately say about his roles on TV and how he's got the ladies and he's got, so much popularity, and he's not trying to, kind of show off. He's just stating the facts. And you're just sitting there and not really moved by it at all, because for you, food is just about eating food, but it's nothing more than that. So now this chef, he becomes, how you're supposed to act like this. I want respect. I demand respect. I am on TV. I am popular. So now what happened here? So now he's now demanding respect. So the only way this can go wrong is if one sort of loses their perspective and they recognize you only get respect from people who actually find what you have to say important. If I say this to those who like swimming, suppose I go to swimmers, like I go to a public pool and I start speaking about self-knowledge and, creation and how it all came about and all of this. And they're like, yeah, fella, let's just jump into the pool, let's have a race, let's go. So they're not going to find that important. which is fine, but it only becomes a problem if I take that at an offense, right? So this should not be the case. But, at the same time, everyone should be given respect, because if we don't give people some level of appreciation, some level of acknowledgement, then we close them down. And so we don't allow them to shine. And if we don't allow someone to shine, think about the repercussions this is going to have on their life. So we're not here to kill or to dim people's lights. We either let those lights be as they are, or we're just there to acknowledge them, to help them to shine further. Because sometimes someone needs to maybe say something that is inappropriate, so that they can learn from their errors through feedback, so they can now have their own learning experience. So this means one still has this duty. This is uparama, right? The duty, doing what has to be done, to just remain sort of this equanimous. Shama and Dhamma is equanimous, having equanimity towards hot and cold. In fact, this is endurance, right? Having equanimity towards cold and hot, praise and censure. So that we can let people shine, right? Their unique talents, their unique glories. So this way, they can move forward and evolve. Just like you and I, believe it or not, are here. Why? Because there were some people in our life that we have encountered who let us be ourselves. The weird self, the strange self, the silly self, the confused self, the intelligent self, the pride self. There were some people who did not have a negative reaction to that. And in their presence, we were allowed to express this uneducated self, so much so that it allowed us an opportunity to look back and see that that was not the right behavior. And so through that, we improved. So in other words, they didn't dismiss us. And because they didn't dismiss us, because of that, we were able to grow. So this means one has an equal opportunity, equal responsibility to uphold, other people's sort of silliness. Because see, tell me one person who is born who has all knowledge, who's just educated, they can just cook, they can speak, they can calculate. Tell me one person who knows everything when they get born. We don't even know how to walk. We don't even know how to say no or yes, right? Except push it away. So in other words, no one is born educated. And for that reason, there is a level of endurance that one can have in reference to the to life circumstances that, in all different forms, of course, that come our way. So we have a responsibility to accommodate that in some way or the other, right? Without kind of, moving, without being too disturbed by it. Yeah. So this is very important because, see, this is where it really comes down to remaining equanimous, remaining decent, remaining, falling back, having that big picture throughout your dealings, because that allows you to what? Bring in system 2. And system 2 is what we need to bring in this knowledge and therefore evolve as a human being. Next one, samadhanam kim. Chittaikagrata. What is samadhanam? It is the capacity to absorb your mind into anything for a length of time. If you want to prepare a good meal, where is your mind? It is with the meal, right? It's collected, it's together, it is with the activity. The mind is with the activity. The mind is with the situation. Where the body is, there the mind is also. So single pointedness is just having that ability to remain in one place until you finish that chapter, or listening to that 30 minutes of audio, or finishing that plan, or completing that project, right? Long enough, intentionally bringing your mind, constantly bringing it back until the task is finished. Why is this important? Because the mind likes to go elsewhere, right? We just said system 1 is this, it works through associative memory. So the moment you give it one word, right? It wants to what? Now instantly bring, like, remember what happened at, in France, and then in France, oh, I met someone and then they took me to this place and I went to a restaurant and then we had this food, and then food reminds you of this plate, and the plate fell down, and then this noise reminds you of something. So the mind just it just keeps on going like endlessly. So this is about bringing it back to what we are doing right now, to what you are doing right now, long enough until you have some productivity. How is it possible? Is this absorption possible if one hasn't settled accounts with the world? Suppose there's 50 things I haven't resolved. I haven't resolved things over here, neighbors, finances, this and this and this and this and this and this. And all of these things, right? Onslaught of these things are in the mind. Is single pointedness, how likely are you going to succeed at single pointedness? It's highly unlikely. It's going to be a battle. This is why, like, Swami Dayananda, he said this. What one needs to do is to first settle accounts with the world, decently settle accounts with the world. See, it's not possible to completely settle accounts with the world. This is where we go to the other extreme, but decently, so much so that things are, there's space in your life for your own studies. There is space for your own quiet time. There is space for your own alone walks or for your own things that you find important. So there's enough spaciousness in your life that you can relax and do your own thing. In fact, the word samadhanam, it's made up of two words. Sama means same, and adhana is putting in. So what does this mean? Same putting in. So what is single pointedness? It's the place, it's a time where the same kind of thoughts are being put into your mind. That means the same thought pertinent to one topic is being put in. That means there are not other thoughts, but only one same thought is being put in for a certain amount of time. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Samadhanam. Mumukshu tvam kim. Moksho me bhuyat. Iti icha. What is a mumukshu? Who is that one who is desirous of liberation? Moksho me bhuyat. In Sanskrit, this is a benedictive. This is like an affirmation, a strong, affirmative statement. May moksha be for me. I want moksha. May this be for me. It's an affirmative statement. It's a statement that comes with authority. And who's the authority? You are. You are making an authoritative statement to yourself. May liberation be for me in this life. It shall be no other way. So you're making this very affirmative and focused statement. So this means that this fella, right, who desires liberation, they know relatively what is involved in liberation. One cannot just do things one after the other. So one has gone through a cycle of doing, and they recognize that doing has not gotten me anything except the need to do more. So now how much more do I need to do until something happens? So the mind has gone through this sort of process and it's come to a certain conclusion that there has to be more than just breathing, pranayama, yoga, asanas. There has to be more than, moving your energy up and down. There has to be more than all of this. So the brain has, or the mind has come to this conclusion, and they understand things like, self-realization and self-knowledge. There is no self-realization, as I said, because you don't realize the self. Realization is a one-off. It is self-knowledge. You're gaining knowledge about who you are. It's not a matter of realizing anything. You're gaining knowledge about who you are. Okay. They in other words, they are conscious with the words they use, because the more words, the greater postponement. The more words one uses, the more postponed. This is why the most common obstruction that any teacher will receive through emails is they will get asked questions about all sorts of terms. And these terms will picked up where? They were picked up in the spiritual world. So now what the teacher has to answer, this and this and this and this and this and this, and all of these terms are now obstructing the fella's chance of any real single pointedness of samadhanam, right? So this means we have to now, acknowledge that not all words are useful. Yeah, self-realization may be very popularized because of Ramana Maharishi, but it is not the word, it is not a phrase to be used at all, because on inquiry, it's not about realizing, it's about gaining knowledge or removing ignorance. And this knowledge, what do we call this knowledge? Well, we call this Tattva Bodha, knowledge of reality. And what is this reality? You're that reality. We call this knowledge Brahma Vidya, knowledge of Brahman, Atmanyanam, knowledge of Atman. So this is what Mumukshu understands relatively decently. And they know what's involved. They know what's involved and what's not involved. And what is not involved is you don't need to raise any snake up your spine. There's no snake. And whatever snake, even if you raise the snake, suppose you raise some snake, right? Some serpent, okay? And then you tell me, hey, I raised the snake and it was a very smooth raising. And I experienced ecstasy for 1 hour afterwards. In fact, I was high for the next 3 days. Now, what will I say to that? Okay, now what? How are you right now? Well, I don't know, but I'm talking about what happened before. Okay, so we're not interested in what happened before. We're talking about what are you understanding right now? See, even if you had some ecstasy, then how long did it last? It lasted for an hour or 3 days or 7 days. That is not what we want. We're not interested in short-term lived experiences. We're interested in a permanent understanding which has no higher, an understanding which cannot be topped, an understanding which has nothing, which nothing can add onto it. So this is a mumukshu. They understand what is involved and what is not involved. They know what japa is for. They know what kundalini is for. They know what asanas is for. There is a level of clearing the mind. There is a level of concentration. There is an aspect of, kind of getting away a little bit and just recollecting your thoughts. But that is not the end of life. The end of life is removing ignorance that prevents one from recognizing what is true. And what is true, we will see next week. And this, we will investigate, we will begin our investigation. What is this true reality that is ever true, that obtains in the 3 periods, which is tattva. In fact, Tattva Bodha means knowledge of this reality, knowledge of you. Next verse. So all it's now saying is, this is the 4-fold qualification. Therefore, they become fit to inquire into the truth. However, I just want to bring you some context. I'm going to go back to Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampana Adhikarinam. So again, I'm going back all the way to the beginning when we said, so who is an adhikari, right? Who is an adhikari? Who is that one that is ready, who has readiness to perform tattva viveka, which will give moksha? That one is the one who has or who is endowed with sadhana chatushtaya, the one who is endowed with 4-fold qualifications. And what are these 4-fold qualifications? Okay, we said nitya anitya vastu. That means discernment between the permanent and the impermanent. We said viraga. That means lack of longing for this anityam. Now samadhi shatka, 6-fold virtues, which we just covered, and mumukshutvam. They are desirous of liberation. Nothing can stop them. There is a genuine desire. It's called a burning desire, a burning desire. That means a desire where nothing can take you away from it. Despite the demands of the world, one always returns back and says, what matters to me most is the truth. I want to discover and I want to know. So this is a burning desire. And this burning desire is what an adhikari enjoys. An adhikari, the one who is what? Qualified to do what? Tattva viveka. Perform the process, perform this viveka, this discriminative inquiry pertaining to reality. And what will this give? Moksha.
I was asking about bhakti. I hate to refer to this again, but just because it's like in the Bhagavad Gita or anything you read, it's always like one of those, it's always one of the big paths, that you have to, I don't know. I guess that's why I was asking about it. Anyway, that's another time.
Well, Carrie, you know, this is bhakti. You have you know, bhakti is love. What you love, you have devotion for. You know, when we are devoted to our partner, it means we love our partner. That means we spend time with our partner because we love them, because we're devoted to them. Just like that, when we are devoted to a topic, it means you love, you love that topic. You just enjoy that topic. It means something for you. So to love and to have devotion, they're actually one and the same thing. Just looked at from two different sides. Okay, you have devotion for this. That's why you're here.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I always, you know, I always think of it as like worshiping these gods and idols and things, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
No. That is a what do you call it? A pop spirituality. This is a common image. That is not what bhakti is about. Bhakti is just what you love, and its expression comes in many different ways. Not just, you know, devotion or devotion to these gods. That is just one. That's not the only one. Self-knowledge is also bhakti. What we're doing now is also bhakti.
Oh, okay. Better. Okay. Thank you.
Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.